Okay, so if you're into crypto at all, you've probably seen the news about the SEC and Ripple, that whole legal thing that's been going on forever.
Yeah, seems like it's finally reached some kind of turning point.
Yeah, exactly. We've been digging into a bunch of reports trying to figure out like what actually happened and,
Yeah.
what it all means, especially for XRP.
Big implications potentially.
Big time, yeah. So we've got stuff from Bloomberg Barron's, CNBC, and you. Today we're going to try to piece it all together for you guys.
I think the timing here is really interesting. This whole thing has dragged on for over 4 years, and it just so happens to wrap up just a few weeks into Trump's new term.
Yeah, Bloomberg even pointed that out in one of their articles.
Right. I mean, given everything he said about cryptocurrency during his campaign, it makes you wonder if the timing's just a coincidence.
It does, for sure.
Like maybe this is a sign of things to come with this new administration.
Yeah, maybe. And the market definitely reacted. XRP's price jumped up quite a bit when the news broke. Bloomberg said it went up as much as 15%. Barron said something like 9%. And you today reported an 11% spike literally within minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
I mean, that's not super unusual, though, right, for crypto? I mean, the market tends to be pretty reactive to big news like this.
True, true.
But it is definitely a sign that people have been waiting for this for a long time, and that there's a lot of optimism now that this legal cloud over Ripple is finally starting to lift.
Yeah, well, Barron's actually pointed out that it wasn't all smooth sailing.
Really?
Yeah, they said that XRP actually started the day in the red.
Oh, wow.
And then by mid-morning on Thursday, it had climbed to be up about 0.7% at 2.51.
So still a win, but yeah, a bit of a roller coaster ride.
Exactly. So, yeah, like a lot of ups and downs.
I think that probably reflects some investors, taking profits after that initial surge, which is pretty typical too.
Makes sense. So let's get down to the details here. What are the key takeaways from this SEC decision? What does it actually mean for Ripple and for XRP and for the whole crypto regulatory landscape now that we've got this new administration?
Right. Well, I think to understand what this all means, you have to remember some of the things that Trump has said about crypto in the past.
For sure. For sure.
Barron's brought up the fact that he actually talked about potentially adding XRP to the U.S. government's own crypto holdings at one point.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And Bloomberg also mentioned that he's made these general promises about creating a more crypto-friendly regulatory environment.
It's definitely setting a certain tone.
Yeah, exactly. It's signaling that things might be changing.
And then there was that digital asset summit. I think it was Barron's covered that.
Right.
And he was very direct about his plans. He said his administration's goal is to make the U.S. the crypto capital of the world.
Wow.
Yeah, he even talked about ending what he called the weaponization of the legal system against crypto.
That's pretty strong language.
It is so, how do you see that philosophy actually translating into real policy changes?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I mean, talk is cheap.
Right.
Turning rhetoric into actual policy that takes time.
Yeah.
It involves a lot of different moving parts, different government agencies and all that.
Right, a lot of bureaucracy.
Exactly. But I do think that his statements at least suggest that we might be moving away from that really enforcement-heavy approach that we've seen from regulators in the past.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll see more clarity, more of a collaborative spirit between regulators and the crypto industry.
Hopefully so. We'll see.
Fingers crossed.
So speaking of things moving in the right direction, we've got to talk about Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse's statements.
Oh, yeah. He's been pretty vocal.
Yeah, he didn't mince words. He came right out and said that the SEC is dropping its appeal.
Which is huge.
Huge. And he called it a resounding victory, not just for Ripple, but for the whole crypto space.
So you win.
Yeah. And Bloomberg mentioned that he estimates Ripple spent like $150 million defending itself in this whole ordeal.
Whoa, that's a lot of money.
That's crazy, right?
It just shows you the stakes involved in all this, these regulatory battles within the crypto industry are not for the faint of heart.
No kidding. And it's not just about the money, right?
Right.
Think of all the time and energy and resources that could have been spent on innovation and growth.
Right.
It's a big distraction.
It is. And Garlinghouse's reaction, I think, really shows how much relief and vindication Ripple must feel.
Totally. But there is a but.
Oh, there's always a but, isn't there?
Right. Bloomberg pointed out that it's not completely over yet.
Right.
There's still this issue of the $125 million fine that's in escrow right now. And apparently Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart Alderodi, said that they're still weighing their options. They haven't decided whether to continue their own appeal related to that earlier ruling about institutional sales of XRP or just pay the fine fine and be done with the whole thing.
So even though the SEC is dropping the appeal on the broader classification of XRP, like whether it's a security or not,
Right.
there's still some legal stuff to sort out.
Yeah, exactly. It's not totally clear yet.
So what do you think, what's the significance of that remaining uncertainty?
Well, I think it shows that even though this is a big win for Ripple, the legal fight isn't over yet. You know, that issue of how XRP was sold to institutional investors in the past, that's still a point of contention.
Yeah.
And I think Ripple's decision on whether to keep fighting or to settle, it really comes down to weighing the costs and benefits, you know?
For sure.
Is it worth it to keep spending money and time on legal fees, or is it better to just pay the fine and move on and focus on the future?
It's a tough call.
It is. So, okay, big picture time. What are the most important takeaways from all of this?
I think the biggest one is the SEC dropping its appeal.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the headline, right?
It is, and Bloomberg really drove this point home. You know, they said that this is basically the end of a case that everyone was watching super closely because it was seen as a major test for crypto regulation in the U.S.
Yeah, high stakes, for sure.
And remember, that ruling back in 2023 that was already considered a partial victory for Ripple because it drew a distinction between retail and institutional sales of XRP. This latest move by the SEC basically solidifies that partial victory, but on a much larger scale.
Okay, so that's the legal side of things.
Right.
But then we've also got the market's reaction to consider.
Oh, yeah. That initial jump in XRP's price, that really tells you something.
I mean, it hit something like 2.59 according to Bloomberg.
Whoa.
Before settling back down a bit. But still, it shows just how much this legal uncertainty has been weighing on investors.
Makes sense.
Right now, it's hovering around 2.44.
Still a good bump.
Yeah, not bad. And then, of course, we have this whole new political landscape with President Trump. You know, he's made it pretty clear that he's pro-crypto.
Yeah, Barron's has been covering that angle a lot.
Right. And so you've got this potential for a more favorable regulatory environment.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the Trump administration is signaling that they want to see the digital asset industry grow and flourish in the U.S.,
right,
which could mean that we're headed for a more predictable and less adversarial relationship between the industry and regulators.
Which would be a good thing.
Definitely, because that kind of stability could encourage more innovation and investment in the sector.
It makes sense. And when you look specifically at Ripple, Bloomberg reported that their CEO Garlinghouse is saying they're going to focus on acquisitions going forward.
Interesting.
Yeah. And they're also thinking about an IPO down the line, although that's not an immediate plan.
Okay.
And Barron's highlighted his prediction that we might even see an XRP ETF approved sometime this year.
So they're thinking big.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think all of that tells us about Ripple's strategy?
I think it suggests that they're really looking to expand their reach and their capabilities.
Right.
Focusing on acquisitions could be a way to quickly integrate new technologies or gain access to new markets.
Yeah.
And that whole XRP ETF thing, that's a big deal because it could open up XRP to a much wider pool of investors, you know, including institutional investors who might be more comfortable with the regulated structure of an ETF.
Right, right. And then IPO down the road would be a major milestone.
Absolutely.
Like it would really signal their ambition to become this major publicly traded company.
Yeah, a real player in the financial world.
Oh, and I almost forgot you. Today, had this interesting bit of technical analysis. They were talking about the Bollinger Bands for XRP.
Oh, yeah.
And they suggested that there might be a breakout coming, potentially even testing that historical high of around 3.40 that we saw earlier this year.
Wow, so they're bullish.
Yeah. I mean, how do you interpret that technical perspective in light of all this other stuff that's going on?
Well, I think it's important to remember that technical analysis is all about looking at historical patterns and volatility.
Right.
But the fact that you today is seeing this potential breakout, it does align with all the positive fundamental news about the SEC case and the possibility of a more supportive regulatory environment.
Yeah, true.
And they also mentioned that XRP found support at a key level, which could be a sign of renewed bullish momentum.
Okay, so let's bring it all home when you put it all together, the end of this legal battle, the potential for a more crypto-friendly regulatory environment, Ripple's big plans for the future. What are the big questions that come to mind for you about the long-term impact on XRP and on the whole crypto space, both here in the US and globally?
It's really exciting to think about, this whole thing could really be a catalyst for change.
Yeah.
It might pave the way for more regulatory clarity and greater acceptance of cryptocurrencies by traditional financial institutions.
Yeah, that would be huge.
And the outcome of this case, combined with the new administration's stance on crypto, that could have ripple effects across the globe. It might influence how other countries approach crypto regulation, and it could lead to even more innovation in the blockchain ecosystem.
It feels like we're at a real turning point.
I think so, too.
A lot to think about.
Definitely.
So much is changing so fast, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, but that's what makes it so interesting, right?
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll keep you updated as things develop.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Hit subscribe and turn on notifications.